Córdoba, Argentina, November 23, 1948. A Catholic funeral is forming in the heat. A black hearse arrives. A German priest adjusts his collar. 120 mourners clutch rosaries. The death certificate says the deceased is Elisabeth Keller, file 773-48. But no one in Córdoba has ever met her, because she never existed. At 15:15 hours, Wernher Keller steps toward the open grave, believing grief is protection. 6 men close in. 1 carries a syringe. In the next 60 seconds, a rocket scientist will vanish without a gunshot, shifting the Cold War's balance in Operation BLACK REQUIEM. Wernher Keller isn't famous. That's intentional. In the wreckage of 1945, the men who built the V2 program don't just carry equations. They carry secrets, fingerprints, and bodies. The question facing Allied intelligence isn't whether these men are valuable. It's who gets to them first. Keller's defining skill is simple to explain and terrifying to control. He can turn liquid fuel, guidance gyros, and mass production into a missile that reaches beyond borders. That makes him valuable to anyone preparing the next war. By late 1948, U.S. intelligence believes Keller is living quietly in Córdoba, protected by sympathetic expatriate networks and a government that can look the other way. Argentina in this period is widely documented as a refuge for Nazi fugitives and collaborators. It's an ecosystem where false names can survive for years. The problem isn't finding Keller. It's touching him without starting an international incident or getting him snatched first. Keller arrived in Buenos Aires in 1946 using documentation that listed his occupation as agricultural consultant. The alias survived 2 police checks. He moved to Córdoba 6 months later, settling into a neighborhood where German was spoken more than Spanish. Associates described him as methodical, never impulsive. He attended Mass every Sunday. He avoided U.S.-linked contacts. He rarely traveled. Intelligence services had tracked Keller for 18 months. By October 1948, the CIA concluded Keller represented a strategic asset that could not be allowed to fall into Soviet hands. The authorization to act came in early November, but direct action carried unacceptable risk. In 1948, the CIA is still young, still improvising its role. Washington is formalizing covert action as a tool of statecraft. A key directive that year expands the agency's remit to plan and conduct covert operations, building the bureaucratic logic for deniable action. The doctrine is straightforward. When open diplomacy fails and war is unthinkable, invisible action fills the gap. But Córdoba presents obstacles that make conventional extraction impossible. Keller rarely travels. Argentine security services monitor foreign nationals. Any visible force risks Perón's police. Nazi networks run counter-surveillance. And Soviet-linked intermediaries are reportedly arranging a meeting, meaning the window is closing. Planners identify a vulnerability that's psychological, not geographic. Keller trusts 2 things absolutely: the German expatriate community and the Catholic Church. Both represent safety. Both enforce social codes where violence is unthinkable. So the strategy becomes clear. Don't break into Keller's world. Make him walk into yours. The CIA calls this the ritual deception strategy. The logic is straightforward. Create a scenario where the target's own beliefs disable his defenses. In this case, that scenario is a funeral. A funeral creates predictable movement, predictable timing, and a socially enforced perimeter. People look away. Grief lowers guards. Despite these advantages, planners face 3 critical challenges. First, the deception must be complete. Any detail that fails to convince will abort the operation. Second, timing must be precise. Keller needs to appear with minimal protection. Third, extraction must be invisible. Any public confrontation destroys deniability. Within 3 weeks, all elements would be in position. But first, one critical element needed to be resolved: creating a dead woman who never existed. During the planning phase, the lead operative experienced what handlers call legend drift. He'd spent 2 weeks building Elisabeth Keller's paper trail: birth records, baptismal certificates, condolence notices. He knew her favorite hymn. He knew where she'd been born. He knew she'd never existed. But when he walked into the church for the final reconnaissance, he found himself looking for her in the faces of the mourners. In the post-operation debrief, the assessment noted potential for operational confusion. But the mission continued. Intercepted communications from November 10th revealed Keller discussing his mother's health with a contact in Buenos Aires. Analysts noted nothing operationally relevant. He mentioned she was aging. He mentioned he should visit. When the false death notice reached him 13 days later, the human impact was immediate. He believed it without question. By November 18th, the operation entered its execution phase. A report confirmed Soviet-linked intermediaries had arrived in Buenos Aires. The window was 72 hours. The operation begins with paper, not guns. CIA forgers construct a complete identity for a woman who will never be buried. Elisabeth Keller receives a municipal death certificate numbered 773-48. The cause of death: cardiac arrest. The hospital: Hospital Privado Córdoba. The attending physician's signature is genuine. The doctor doesn't know his credentials were borrowed. Church records are more delicate. A baptismal certificate is backdated to 1902. A marriage license appears in the parish registry. Condolence notices are planted in German-language community bulletins. The whole deception gets a simple internal label: Black Requiem. The name comes from the Catholic funeral rite: Requiem aeternam dona eis, Domine. Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord. Analysts appreciate the irony. Next comes infrastructure. A hearse is acquired through a sympathetic funeral director who believes he's helping anti-communist expatriates. The vehicle is modified in a garage outside the city. Engineers install a false floor. They add a stretcher rail. They create a sealed compartment for medical supplies. The modifications are reversible. Within 6 hours, the hearse can return to normal service. A second vehicle runs leapfrog surveillance on the route from city to cemetery. It's a black Ford sedan, forgettable, with diplomatic plates that discourage police checks. The driver is an embassy clerk whose official duties involve consular paperwork. His actual duties involve never being remembered. The team is compact by necessity. 6 OSS veterans repurposed for CIA work, each with one job. Surveillance specialist monitors approach routes. Medical officer carries the sedation package. Crowd control manages the mourners. Driver handles the hearse. Priest liaison ensures Catholic ritual appears authentic. Airport handoff coordinates final exfiltration. 2 anchor details make the lie feel real. First, 120 paid mourners, enough to look unquestionable, not enough to become uncontrollable. They're recruited through intermediaries who believe they're participating in a memorial for a respected community member. Each receives 20 pesos. The sum is carefully calibrated, enough to motivate, not enough to create suspicion. Second, a German expatriate priest whose presence tells Keller, "This is your world." Father Hermann Vogel is a genuine Catholic priest who fled Germany in 1938. He opposes Nazism. He doesn't oppose helping German expatriates. The CIA approach is indirect. He's told a family needs urgent pastoral assistance. He agrees without knowing the family doesn't exist. The planning consumed 19 days. By November 22nd, all elements were positioned. The team had 36 hours before Soviet contact was expected. They don't invite Keller. They pull a lever inside his identity. A message reaches him through the one channel he trusts, the expatriate community grapevine. The information comes from a woman Keller knows as Frau Müller, a community elder he's met at Mass. She's actually a contract asset whose real name is never recorded in any file. The message is simple. Your mother has died. The church has arranged everything. The family expects you, quietly. The emotional hook is paired with operational reassurance, a daytime service in a Catholic cemetery, where violence would be unthinkable and witnesses are everywhere. Complications hit immediately. On November 20th, a local official asks questions about the paperwork. The death certificate is legitimate. The hospital confirms the record, but the official is thorough. He wants to interview the attending physician. The team adapts. The funeral is moved forward by 24 hours, creating urgency that discourages additional scrutiny. On November 21st, a neighbor spots unfamiliar faces near Keller's residence. Surveillance reports indicate possible Nazi network counter-surveillance. The team increases mourners from 100 to 120. More social cover. More witnesses means more protection for everyone. On November 22nd, a rumored Nazi courier appears in Córdoba earlier than expected. This suggests Keller may be under competing surveillance. The team shortens the ceremony window from 45 minutes to 30. Less time for interference. Less time for anyone to study the mourners too closely. What Keller doesn't know is that every person who confirmed his mother's death is part of the operation. The woman who delivered the news. The priest who called to express condolences. The funeral director who offered dignified service. Reality has been counterfeited so completely that questioning it would require questioning his entire community. The execution window opens when Keller does exactly what planners needed. He leaves with minimal security, betting that grief and God are shields. November 23rd, 0800 hours. The surveillance specialist confirms Keller is preparing to depart his residence. He's wearing a dark suit. He's alone. The assessment. Target believes operational environment is safe. 1300 hours. The hearse arrives at Cementerio San Jeronimo, north of Córdoba's city center. It parks in a position that faces outward, ready to roll, not trapped. The driver checks fuel. The medical officer confirms sedation package is accessible. Total preparation time, 4 minutes. 1340 hours. Mourners begin arriving. They form clusters near the gravesite. Conversations are quiet. Rosaries are visible. The crowd creates exactly what planners intended. A living wall that looks like grief, but functions as a perimeter. 1400 hours. Father Vogel arrives. He meets with the funeral director. He reviews the ceremony schedule. He asks about the deceased's family. He's told they're traveling from Buenos Aires. The lie holds because it's simple. Complex lies fail. Simple lies survive. 1430 hours. The casket is positioned. It's sealed. It contains ballast, sandbags wrapped in cloth, because an empty casket sounds empty. Mourners approach. They place flowers. They bow heads. The emotional environment is now operationally useful. Anyone watching sees exactly what they expect to see. 1455 hours. The surveillance specialist confirms movement. Keller is approaching. He's in a taxi. Still alone. Distance, 6 blocks. Estimated arrival, 15:10 hours, 15:05 hours. Father Vogel begins the service. Mourners form a dense horseshoe around the grave. The crowd control specialist positions himself at the natural exit route. His job isn't to block, it's to make blocking unnecessary by filling space that looks accidental. 15:12 hours. Keller appears. No bodyguards in arm's reach, only distance and etiquette. He enters the cemetery on foot. His face shows what analysts expected. Controlled grief mixed with relief the community has gathered. He believes he's safe because 120 people are watching. He doesn't understand that's exactly why he's vulnerable. 15:15 hours. As Keller approaches the gravesite, the 6 men compress space. It's gradual. It looks like natural crowd movement. The priest liaison blocks Keller's retreat with a prayer book held like a prop. Another operative steps close, murmurs a phrase Keller will later remember as his last normal sound. Amen. The medical officer delivers morphine. The injection is subcutaneous, entering at the lower back where suit fabric conceals penetration. The dosage is 8 milligrams, enough to induce rapid sedation without respiratory depression. The method is fast, clinical, silent. Keller's knees soften before his brain can label danger. Elapsed time from injection to collapse. 11 seconds. 15:16 hours. The mourner's sobs rise on cue. The sound covers the shuffle of feet. It covers the dull contact of a body meeting a stretcher. 2 operatives support Keller as though he's overcome with emotion. The crowd sees a man collapsing in grief. The crowd sees exactly what the operation designed them to see. The medical officer applies a second injection, atropine 0.5 milligrams, to maintain cardiac stability during transport. Keller is placed in the hearse through the rear door. The false floor is already open. The sealed compartment accepts him like cargo. The door closes. Total time from collapse to concealment: 43 seconds, 15:18 hours. Father Vogel continues the ceremony. He doesn't pause, he doesn't acknowledge, he doesn't know. The funeral proceeds exactly as planned, for another 12 minutes. Mourners pray. They sing hymns. They disperse slowly. When Argentine police later interview witnesses, every person describes a normal funeral disrupted only by one mourner's emotional collapse. 15:21 hours. The hearse moves. It doesn't speed. It doesn't draw attention. It follows traffic regulations with absolute precision. The route is north-northwest toward Pajas Blancas Airport, 17 kilometers from the city center. The driver uses secondary roads. He avoids checkpoints. He stops once at a rail crossing and waits for a freight train to pass. 16:05 hours. The hearse reaches an industrial area 2 kilometers from the airport. A third vehicle is waiting, a U.S. diplomatic sedan with legitimate credentials. Keller is transferred. The hearse turns back toward Córdoba. The sedan continues to the airport. 16:18 hours. Inside the airport's military section, a C-47 transport waits with engines warm. The aircraft is registered to U.S. Air Force Cargo Operations. Its flight plan lists destination as Panama. The actual destination is a different airfield where paperclip processing occurs. 16:24 hours. Keller is carried aboard. He's unconscious but stable. The medical officer monitors vitals. Heart rate, 72 beats per minute. Respiration, 14 breaths per minute. Blood pressure, 110/70. The assessment: transport is medically viable. 16:31 hours. The C-47 begins taxi. The tower clears takeoff without questions. Diplomatic flights are routine. This one looks identical to 20 others that month. 16:47 hours. Wheels lift. Argentina falls away below. Keller crosses the border unconscious, unaware he's been extracted. Within the story's timeline, he is paperclip bound before anyone can prove he was ever at the grave. By 0700 hours on November 24th, Keller's residence is quiet. That silence becomes the alarm. A neighbor knocks. No answer. A contact from the expatriate community checks. The door is unlocked. The apartment is undisturbed. Keller is gone. Rumors ignite within hours. Kidnapping, defection, assassination, Soviet action, CIA extraction, Nazi network retaliation. Every theory finds believers. None find proof. The funeral director is questioned. He confirms the service occurred. He provides the death certificate. Police verify the hospital records. Everything checks. But Elisabeth Keller remains a woman no one can find because she never existed. By November 26th, Argentine security services seethe at the humiliation. They suspect foreign action. They can't prove it. Every lead ends in bureaucratic dead ends, suggesting sophistication beyond criminal capacity. The priest is reassigned to a rural parish. The relocation is described as routine. It isn't. The mourners are paid twice, once for their acting, once for their forgetting. The amounts are delivered through intermediaries who never meet the same person twice. Officially, Argentina shrugs. Foreign Minister Juan Bramuglia issues no statement. The government position is implicit. If something happened, it happened to a German national of questionable background. If nothing happened, why investigate? The United States maintains absolute silence. Washington can't celebrate what it can't admit. Any paper trail risks exposing a doctrine still being shaped in real time. Covert action as state policy. The operation exists in classified files accessible to fewer than 20 people. Officially, Wernher Keller entered the United States through standard paperclip channels. His arrival date is listed as December 1948. No mention of Argentina. No mention of Black Requiem. The strategic gain is immediate and specific. Keller's knowledge includes guidance system specifications, fuel mixture ratios, and production bottlenecks that plagued the V2 program. Intelligence gained includes manufacturing techniques the Soviets are desperate to acquire. Within 6 months, Keller's technical debriefings contribute to U.S. missile development programs that will later produce the Redstone rocket. But the operation reveals more than it conceals. It exposes a tradecraft element that becomes doctrine. The cleanest abductions are the ones wrapped in social trust. The church, grief, public rituals. These aren't just cover, they're psychological weapons that disable resistance before it begins. The cost is measured in precedent, not casualties. Diplomatic relations with Argentina deteriorate in ways never formally acknowledged. Perrón's government becomes less cooperative on intelligence sharing. The Nazi networks in South America grow more cautious, making future operations harder. And the Catholic Church in Córdoba begins quietly questioning whether its institutions have been compromised. For the operatives, consequences vary. The surveillance specialist rotates to Berlin. The medical officer continues with paperclip processing. The driver returns to consular work. None speak of Black Requiem outside secure facilities. In 1962, one operative tells a debriefing officer that he still remembers the hymns from the fake funeral. He says sometimes he prays for Elisabeth Keller, even though she never existed. The assessment notes no operational impact. The calculation at CIA headquarters is clinical. Benefits outweighed costs. One strategic asset denied to the Soviets. One precedent established for future operations. One demonstration that the new agency can extract a man from a protected city without firing a shot. if it's willing to counterfeit reality itself. Whether this proved correct would become clear over decades. Black Requiem becomes an internal myth. It's referenced in training. It's studied in case files. It's the operation that proves invisible action works better than visible force. The success teaches a dangerous lesson that doesn't stay in 1948. It becomes a template. But the operation also raises a question that never appears in official assessments. Was Wernher Keller a war criminal who built weapons that killed thousands, making his removal a strategic necessity? Or was he a scientist whose expertise was stolen through an operation that corrupted religious ritual, exploited community trust, and proved that American intelligence would kidnap foreign nationals on foreign soil using methods indistinguishable from those it claimed to oppose? The answer reveals more about your worldview than about Keller. One perspective argues he was complicit in mass death and represented an active threat if acquired by the Soviets. Removing him prevented the next mass casualty. The other perspective argues that kidnapping on foreign soil using falsified religious ceremonies establishes a precedent where any action becomes justified if labeled strategic necessity. Both perspectives use the same facts. Both reach opposite conclusions. The operation succeeded by every measurable standard. But success doesn't resolve the moral paradox, it sharpens it. What's your take? If Keller's knowledge could save American lives, but the only way to acquire him was a staged funeral and a drugged abduction on sovereign soil, would you call Operation Black Requiem justice, or just a better disguised crime? Drop your perspective in the comments. If this story made you question where intelligence work ends and moral compromise begins, hit that like button and share.